What's up, everybody? I am Levi Brickley, your host with the Pursuing Truth podcast, and this is SNL Hot Takes, yo. Got my awesome co-host with me, Samantha Jimenez. Super excited every time we get together and have conversations that are deep, meaningful, and hopefully impactful. Hopefully you guys as listeners kind of take something from this. Look, I'm just going to be straightforward and raw with you guys. I may not be on top of my game today. Put down like 500 milligrams caffeine. I may be on the downhill slide from that, but it is all good. We're going to have a good conversation. How you doing, Sam?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm trying to be as hyped up as you. I didn't have 500 milligrams. I probably had like 300. So I'm going to try to match the energy here.
I'm sure you will. You always do. You always do a good job. And, I've been getting a lot of great feedback with the conversations that we're having. The thorough enjoyment of both of us having conversations about these meaningful topics. Today, this is kind of an important topic. Hey, by the way, I did want to share with you guys kind of like what the slogan is of the podcast, because I don't think I've ever done that on an episode before. But what is it? Impacting culture through authentic conversations. So I'm going to continue to say that. I got to be better about it. Remember, this is now the Pursuing Truth podcast. Switched over from the Veritas 21. Check out the new sign, I'm excited about it. That took me 18 hours to do the other day.
And by the way, too, I think that was just a great choice. I love it.
Thank you. All right, y'all. We are talking about like idolization. Haven't even picked out a topic for this yet, but we do have a couple things to go over. And I think really in this culture, we do see a lot of this where we idolize, say, celebrities, influencers, musicians, athletes, and different topics of that nature. What do you see in this culture, Sam, that in regards to idolization, what do you see as probably one of the bigger issues with this?
You said it first, was the idolization of celebrities, influencers, social media in general. It has this way of us comparing ourselves to strangers on the internet. And I'm going to speak for myself or from a woman's perspective. You compare yourself to other women that maybe have a lot more money than you, have a lot more resources to have available to them to make them physically more beautiful, or what our perception is of being beautiful, and that can warp our own identity, especially for the younger generations of men and for women. But in my experience, in my journey, I've experienced a lot of new age practices. It's part of my testimony. If you guys have heard, I kind of talk about that. But this is something I haven't really touched too deep on, so I'm excited we're talking about it. Manifestation, law of attraction. It has a lot of different terms, a lot of different words to describe it, but it's practices that we think today are new. There's a lot of famous people, successful people that promote this. And in my experience, I've done it. I've seen the power of it, and I have a different perspective on it. And I have a different perspective on it than I think even you do on that. So we'll get into that though.
Yeah, I think about it like this, like, a woman scrolling through her Instagram account constantly, she'll see like other women that have this like picture perfect, puresque body that's probably been photoshopped and absolutely perfected. Like maybe there's women out there that want to look just like Kim Kardashian, because we all know there's plenty of men that simp over Kim Kardashian. I am not one of them. I do not fall for things like that. But I will say that there are a lot of men that do that, and unfortunately, the repercussion of that is women that do idolize, say, a body type like that. But going back to like our human nature, I mean, you can look at the Israelites as they were promised 40 years They were promised the promised land, and they spent 40 years wandering the desert because they couldn't trust God, that God was going to lead them to the promised land. And so they began worshiping, cattle, like sculpted cattle and different things like that. And I think, it's a good representation of like oftentimes what happens within our culture right now is it's very easy to look into different aspects of culture and see, a way like, oh, I would like to be like that. It's like have the conversation of who's your hero. You know, that's a big conversation, because a lot of times the person that's the hero is something that you eventually want to do. For me, somebody that was my hero at one time was probably like a Sean Hannity or Ben Shapiro, getting behind the microphone, broadcasting, doing something that's important, that's impactful. I always enjoyed that idea of doing that. But over time, I kind of developed into this different mindset of who is my hero. And to me, now I look at it as, and this is probably like a way that somebody could look at it egotistically, but my hero is me in 10 years, because I want to be the best version of me. So every day I make a decision. Every moment of the day I make a decision. That 1% mentality that you and I have hit on in the past, that's getting me to where I want to be in 10 years. If in 10 years I want to be a Ben Shapiro, if in 10 years I want to be a Joe Rogan, that's the hope. But that's the grind every day. Even today, like I told you at the beginning of this episode, I didn't want to do this. I wasn't sure where this was going to go. And I think, you know, the impact that has on culture, though, is, you know, idolizing, say, a hero or something along those lines, then we fail to be truly and authentically ourselves. And we also lose our relationship with God to some degree, and can get caught up in that ideal per se. Do you have a hero, Sam?
I don't think I have a hero, and it's because I've put a lot of thought into. They say, like, you don't actually want to meet your heroes or the people that you look up to. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's definitely people that I respect and I look up to. Jordan Peterson, for example. I have tickets to go see him in a few months when he's going to be in town. You know, I'm jumping on that opportunity, and I hope to meet him. I probably won't meet him, but, you know, that's somebody I don't want to say that I idolize or he's like my hero, but I think there's a difference in recognizing people who have admirable characteristics than really. I know what you mean. I'm glad you said Kim Kardashian, because I see random people posting Kim Kardashian on their stories, or like, this celebrity got into a new relationship or just married this person, and it's like, they don't know who you are. They're never going to know who you are. Why are you taking the energy or the time to compare yourself or to, you know, look up to somebody who is so physical or focused on all the physical parts of themselves, like a Kim Kardashian? I don't want my future daughters to think that, like, a Kim Kardashian is somebody that they should have as their hero. There's plenty of other respectable women over the course of history that we can look at that are very respectable and are using their minds rather than their bodies to be successful. And everybody has their own idea of what successful is. So a lot of people just tend to, you know, we're surrounded by social media, so a lot of us tend to put emphasis on being successful on the material things.
And the unfortunate part about that is, like, I think a lot of times that is derivative off of, you know, maybe the idolization of somebody, like feeling like you can't measure up, that you aren't worthy. And I think, you know, this is where self-worth really comes in. That's so important, that is often lost in the conversation of looking at, you know, these idols. Maybe it's you feeling like, yo, I want to be Michael Jordan one day, but I failed and I didn't even make it out of high school basketball. So what do you do to move forward? What do you do that changes your life and your perspective on the failure? And I think, you know, one thing that we often, you know, just digging past idols, and then we'll dig into kind of like maybe the astrology or something like that, but digging just a little bit further into the idolization, I think oftentimes we'll see that, you know, there's that depression that comes from that, because people feel like they're failures. I mean, I just feel like I'm just repeating myself at this moment, but it's okay. You're like, yep, you are.
I feel that way all the time. I'm like, I don't know how many different ways to express myself, you know, to find new words for what. So I get it.
And not only that, like I said, I got like 500 milligrams caffeine in me. So I'm just like, I'm just running, you know, but it's something that a lot of people don't talk about. I don't necessarily know why the church isn't talking about this, as if it's almost like a anti-cultural thing that maybe prevents, membership within the church if we talked about idolizing an athlete or idolizing a celebrity or our influencers, musicians. And
touching on what you said, a lot of churches are not going to say that, in my opinion, because they profit so much off of the church members idolizing the pastors, because they believe that they have to, give so much money of their own to help fund, there's a lot of videos. I don't know if you've seen them, but there's videos of pastors that are walking around with, nice watches and nice shoes and like the nicest, newest cars. And then like they get robbed because they know that they're an easy target. But who did they get that from? So if they were to say, hey, you as church members, I'm going to tell all these people in church that they shouldn't idolize ABC people or things, then they also fall into that category, and that jeopardizes their livelihood or their lifestyle. So it's a threat not just to them, but to the whole church.
What's your perspective of law of attraction?
I'm going to give you my perspective on my experience, because I practiced law of attraction, manifestation for, I want to say, around 5 years. And now I don't practice it anymore since reading the Bible. But in the time that I spent in it and practicing it, studying it, it's something that is very real and very powerful. So I know some Bible-believing Christians will say that that's, it doesn't have any truth to it, that it doesn't work. I disagree with that. I've seen it work. And like we'll get into, a lot of very successful people promote it. And I think it's dangerous for a lot of people who are just starting out, because it's the separating factor from self-improvement on a way that is going to be idolizing yourself, or what's your intention, what's your purpose behind it? Because a lot of it, if you take a step back, people are promoting, these successful people, business owners are promoting this idea of making more money, or manifesting the house that you want, or manifesting the car, your dream car, like whatever it is. It's different for every person, but it tends to fall into the realm of material things.
Right. And I think the other thing too is the common view is I can think anything I want into existence, essentially. And that takes away the power of God's sovereignty to say, you know what, Levi, you're not getting that house. Levi, you're not getting that job that you so desperately want. No matter what I think could possibly come into existence, if I've submitted to God, then because I've submitted to God, then everything I have now is because he's given it to me. And so all glory to him and no glory to my own mindset that it gave it to me by me thinking it into existence. I think, you talk about, somebody about the self-help, which is a Tony Robbins, right? Gosh, that guy looks like a cokehead. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it, man. He walks around, I think he just did 3 lines of cocaine. I'm just being straightforward, okay? I know that we usually keep things clean here on the Pursuing Truth podcast, but I just have to say that that's my personal opinion about Tony Robbins. But he's got tons of books, and he talks about this all the time. And believe me, I mean, I think he came out with a Amazon or Netflix documentary a few years ago that was like a 3 or 4 part series that I watched. And this was where I really started to learn about the law of attraction. And as he talked about it, I'm just sitting here thinking, man, this is like so appealing. This is such an appealing message that I can think whatever I want into existence. I just have to believe it full-heartedly. I think that you can look at even current day pastors, televangelists like Joel Osteen. He's one that preaches a prosperity gospel that says essentially God is here to serve us. That's the opposite view of what true Christianity is, which is I'm a servant to Jesus. But it's almost like the view is that God is a servant to me, that if I give to him, then he reciprocates and gives back to me. Now, there are some Bible verses that do kind of support that idea, but maybe only a little bit theologically, but it's not a truth-bearing thing, and it takes away from God's sovereignty when we say that we can just pray it into existence, we can think it into existence, blah, 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 blah. Look, it's never about self. I think this is where a lot of the hardships in our culture comes from, is the focus of self, which I say it over and over and over, but I can't reiterate it enough that we are called to die to ourselves. That I think I want to be a millionaire. God doesn't have that in store for me potentially. And I have to be okay with that because my submission is to him.
And I have a way of believing that the longer we fight what God's will is for us or God's plan for us, we're just hurting ourselves, right? God is still gonna, we are just here for a short amount of time, and God is gonna just give us the free will to choose what we want. And if we are stuck on a mindset that, I'll use myself, like, I need to have this car, for example, like my dream car. And if that's not in the plans, if that's complete, and I'm focusing on the complete wrong thing, and I'm using precious time and effort of my own to focus on something that isn't meant for me. I don't deserve it. I didn't do what was meant for that to happen. So I think it can be really hurtful to ourselves if we focus on the wrong thing.
No, you're 100% right. It's kind of like goes back to like what I've said, is that like I was always living for myself. I was hopping from relationship to relationship, fulfilling myself, my own desires, my own wants, whether that was sexually or, financially. I've made decisions in my life that were about me. And as much as people like to say that it's all about you and boosting your self-esteem, it's just very, very dangerous when we don't submit that to God. And if we have wants and we have desires in our life, yeah, pray for them. Pray that God's will be done in those things. But if the expectation is that, well, I deserve it because I prayed for it, well, you you do have the wrong perspective of it. Horoscopes, astrology, yo. This is a big one. Huge one.
I think people are not really gonna like this take, but that's what we're here for. So, you know.
Yo, it's SNL hot takes for a reason. Remember, this is Sam and Levi hot takes. This is not Saturday Night Live hot takes, okay? Yeah. We're not necessarily here to joke. We're here to have this meaningful conversation. Look, I was just take a break real quick, and I want to share with you guys kind of cool things that are happening in the podcast right now. So I made the logo 3 weeks ago. I reestablished the whole platform as the Pursuing Truth podcast. And what's cool is like I've been sharing videos on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and I've got like over 100,000 views across all platforms with the new logo. So it's like it's just kind of like exhilarating just to kind of see, I bust my tail for you guys. This isn't about me, but rather about providing you guys these authentic conversations that we're having. No matter how much you disagree with it, I don't believe I could go an hour into an episode without saying something that you disagree with. So I'm not here to be agreeable. I'm here knowing that I will be disagreeable and there may be some that I offend. And this hot take about astrology, this one's one that you're going to be like, oh, Levi, because this is such a socially accepted ideal. But I want some of your perspectives on it, Sam.
Okay. Yeah, I like this. I've been waiting for the right time to get on this conversation, and I think this is perfect. So when I was back in my, new age period where I was really practicing that stuff, I don't want to say I wasn't heavily interested or influenced by the astrology or the horoscopes like I know a lot of people are. Not just women, men and women. I see both that are kind of obsessed with it. It's kind of like their whole personality. But I mean, okay, I'm not going to get off topic. What I'm trying to say is that people will become so influenced or so obsessed when there have been people that have come out that said, you know what, I used to work for this magazine, I used to work for this column, and my job was to write the horoscopes that you don't really see that today anymore because no one really picks up magazines. But I remember like 10, 15 years ago in the early 2000s, you would go to a magazine and read a horoscope or be in the newspaper and like see a horoscope for the day or for the week or for the month. And there's one woman in particular where she said that that was her whole job, and she would just recycle information. She wasn't an astrologer. She wasn't anybody who had any expertise in this area. So what makes us think that the apps that we have on our phones, or somebody who's making cute posts on Instagram saying that this month for a Virgo, this is the blessing that you're going to have coming to you, or you need to watch out for this person, like, you're blocking things that could potentially be so beneficial to you, or you might be attracting something that you don't need in your life, but because we put so much reliance on these outside forces that are telling us that we're trying to bring into our lives, that it shouldn't be that much effort. It shouldn't be that way, especially if somebody is a Bible believing or call themselves a Christian. You need to reassess, like we all need to reassess and take a look at, where do these things come from? And am I putting too much focus or emphasis on my belief that comes from somebody else, or some day that my birthday lands on, or, you know, being compatible with another person because of what day they're born on? Like, today, there's so many people that are so heavily influenced by this. And I just want people to be aware of what they're doing to themselves and how it makes you look like. It makes you look a little bit unprofessional, or like you can't be taken seriously because you're like, oh, I'm a Virgo, I'm sorry, I'm so rude today, or I'm so grouchy. Like, it's just because like Mercury's in retrograde. Like, it doesn't, you can't do that.
I'll tell you what, I definitely struggle with taking somebody seriously when they say it. I really do. It's like, what just came out of your mouth? You said that because Jupiter was aligned with Venus at this point in time on February 2nd, 1998, that you and I were meant for each other, that the stars aligned to create my personality. I think the truth about it is that throughout all of mankind, we have always wanted to predict the future. So we will look for every little thing. You know, the wind's blowing out of the south today. That means tomorrow it's going to blow out of the west. Whatever the perspective is, not that there's any validity to that at all. But we always have this desire to know more about what's to come. Because if we know what's to come, then we know how to act today. We don't like the unsure. It's in our nature. It's almost like biological that we want to feel safe and we want to feel secure. So my horoscope maybe tells me the type of person that I should love. But I mean, let's put that into like reality. Like, you're basing that off of the stars. And I can't wrap between my ears, I can't wrap that around my mind and let alone spiritually. That's to say that God doesn't have control of my personality, that there's things that God didn't place in my life that were meant to impact me. That's to say that because I was born in a fatherless home, that's not the reason why I may be very driven. I'm driven because I was born in a fatherless home, that I want to be a man that I never had, not because I'm a Virgo. I want what's best for my community because I've given my life to Christ and I love people and I want the best relationship with them, not because I'm a Virgo. Even if, I don't even know if that even applies to being a Virgo. But the moment that, again, going back to when I hear it in the conversation of, well, Levi, you're this way because you're a Virgo. I'm just like, are you serious? Really difficult. What are your thoughts on that?
So, two things. The first one is, it's true. There are, just like the law of attraction or manifestation, there's a lot of truth and a lot of power in like learning how these things work or what they are, because I have some personality traits that technically do align with my horoscope, but I'm not going to base my whole personality or make like big choices or small choices based on the astrological signs. I'm not, that's my point is,
Right.
okay, we can look at things and understand the basis of them, but not be so heavily influenced by them. But the other thing that reminded me when you were talking right now is you as a man, that probably influences when you meet a woman, like she, let's just say like she fits all the attributes that you would find attractive in a woman. But I can imagine that a woman who is going to idolize horoscopes or like crystals, another one, is probably going to make a man feel a certain way. Like maybe she's not as level headed as I thought. Maybe she's not as responsible, or am I making sense? Because
That makes absolute sense, because there was this girl that I was talking to one time, and she claimed to be a Christian. She told me that she does crystals. I immediately jumped to judging her judgment, essentially. I'm trying to determine, I'm like, whoa, how easily deceived is she? Because there's no point in the Bible that calls us to rely on anything that's created. It's like people will worship created things over the creator. And it makes no sense to me. Like crystals are created, and people will worship them. People will worship the stars and the heavens and blah, 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 but not worship the one true God that created everything. And yeah, I definitely turned to like, I'm like, does this girl like actually like, does she recognize what she's saying? Yeah, I'm Christian, but I play with crystals. You know, I think I don't even know. It's almost like you put that like what is it, the salt rock in the corner of the room, and it's supposed to be like good vibes or whatever. Yo, it's like lighting a candle in the room. It is what you make it. If you're like, hey, that rock is in the corner of the room with a little light on and it feels good and whatever. Okay, maybe you feel good because you told yourself when you walked in that room you were going to feel good. It's much like lighting the candle. It's like you like the smell of the candle in the room. And to take it to that next level of good energy, and I think this is probably a thing that comes from you know, crystals or whatever, is that we fail to recognize that we're actually allowing spirits in. Okay. We're in a spiritual warfare, as Sam and I have talked about on previous episodes. Christianity in the modern world, for example, was that our last episode, or was that the episode before? I don't know. Sam, we keep doing so much, you know, we're working so hard over here.
I think it was the last one.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we talked about that we're in the midst of a spiritual war. And so like when you hear, oh, good energy, blah, blah, let in all the good energy. Why aren't you letting in God? God's the good energy. Why are you replacing good or why are you replacing God with good? That doesn't make sense to me. But then you call yourself a Christian. Look, I'm not here to be convicting. I'm not here to be like super harsh about this, but here's the opportunity that I get to have. Like I said, the name of the podcast is the Pursuing Truth Podcast. I can't reiterate it enough. When you hear that name, I hope that the perspective comes in that this is an open dialogue, an open conversation where, to be quite honest, I'm not here to make you feel good with the conversation. You get too much of that. I'm here to be raw and authentic, and that's the reason why this is called SNL Hot Takes. Okay? And I know Sam's here with the same motivation. It's the same reason why she posts the things that she does. We're not here to be part of the world. We're here to be involved in the world, but be separated from the world by having conversations that hopefully you guys kind of take some perspectives of those things and maybe run with them, and maybe ignite that conversation with a friend or family member that you trust, their perspective on. Ask them, hey, what's your perspective of the crystal? You know, what's the perspective of, you know, my celebrities or potential influencers that I idolize and look up to? What's your perspective of astrology? It's easy like I said at the beginning of the episode, it's very easy to like wrap our minds into these things and feel good about them.
And something else too is it's so popular now. Like I'll go to the store, like you walk into Barnes and Noble and they have a whole section in the front of the store when you first walk in, and it's like this manifestation notebook, or this is how to practice the law of attraction, or a box of crystals. At Barnes and Noble, they're promoting this, and shouldn't we be questioning why this is so heavily influenced? And yet the Bible section in Barnes and Noble is like the smallest section in the whole store. There's just questions that I found myself wondering. And then I'm just speaking from my own experience. It gets a point where you're kind of tired of it. You're like, all right, this is it. But when you really take a step back and you look at the vast majority of people that are practicing one thing and like looking at one direction, and then you're wondering, well, why is it that God isn't promoted in schools, or why they're not promoting that in the mainstream? So I just had so many questions, and I think that's what most people are looking for answers. So it's just a matter of, we can take a look at what's in front of us and make the choice for ourselves. I think it's undermining for people to just assume what our beliefs are going to be.
As you were talking, I'm sitting here and I'm looking around the studio, and even having this conversation, it is a little bit convicting to me because, I love this country, like wholeheartedly. I want what's best for this country because I want what's best for my community and my children's future. And I got 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of flags in here, whether it's my uncle's service flag, or, the Pledge of Allegiance behind me, or the Constitution, Declaration of Independence in the corner, or my thin blue line flag just to my right, or my normal American flag in the back of the room. As much as I love this country, I even find myself not wanting to submit the country to God, because I think that, I vote in the right politician. He will make the change. And in the same aspect, we do that in our lives. I do that every single day. The idolization of potentially, what my hero is. My hero is me in 10 years. Maybe I'm idolizing myself. Maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing. Hopefully, in the midst of all of that is the submission to God, and what we truly want in culture is that God's will be fulfilled through his sovereignty to make it right for us, because that's the best possible position. We always trust ourselves. We trust our own intellect. Humans have a natural need to seek knowledge and wisdom. It's the same reason why we ate from the tree of life. And, there's always going to be that seek within us to try and figure out what's in the future. How do I get what I want? And it's the rebellion against God. And a lot of people, unfortunately, in 2022, do not look at it that way. And it just continually becomes more socially acceptable. I look at it this way too, Sam, hopping on TikTok maybe, and like growing the following, growing this platform. Am I idolizing the platform? Am I separating at times the platform? And am I conducting myself in a way that's honoring to God and constantly giving glory to him? I can't be more authentic and raw about that I struggle with that. It's innate in us. It's in our human nature to be that way.
I was just thinking about that today, and we didn't even talk about this. So for you to bring this up, it's like perfect timing, because I haven't been very active on like any of my social medias the last couple weeks. And the reason for that is because just what you said, if I don't put out a message of it glorifying God, and it has the right message and it has me behind it, not what the bigger picture is, and to me, it's not even worth it. So the last couple of weeks, I've just been to a point where I'm like, there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs with this social media thing, just like everything else. It's just, you have so many eyes on you on TikTok and everybody's opinions. So you have to take in your own like mental stability, because if I let people on the internet influence my thoughts or my opinions, and they're not understanding what my true intentions are, that's going to influence the way that I talk to people, or the how authentic I am with my message. So for me, I'm like, my hands are out of this. I can take the time off,
Right.
because we've talked about this before. It's not about us growing a huge following on social media if the message isn't there. If people don't understand why we're doing it. There's plenty of that on social media. You and I are not trying to contribute to that. So being aware of that, and that's on different levels for each person. You don't have to be on TikTok trying to build an audience for us to be like affected by other people's opinions. If we know what we're supposed to be doing, and if we're straying from that path, or things are influencing us in a way that we aren't supposed to, or we feel uncomfortable with, then that's okay to take a little pause, reevaluate ourselves, and get back on the right path.
Yeah, and maybe that perspective is to be, take your boss's position per se, because you want to be in control of things. Understanding that in the midst of all of that, that God's going to give you that position if God wants you to have that position. And you're called as a leader to go into that position and honor God with that position. If you don't, then you're solely serving yourself. And if you're serving yourself, then you're serving imperfection. If you're serving imperfection, then it just leads back to heartbreak, hurt, and honestly, it's just unsuccessful. You will be unsuccessful not pursuing God, because you will be broken. You will have issues unless you just completely decide to be a narcissist and say, I do nothing that's wrong. You're eventually going to have some type of anxiety or depression that comes from you not following God's will. It's the hard truth.
It's really tiring after enough time, and that's what I've learned with a lot of people that share their own testimony, is that people just get tired of trying to do this alone. Like, this is so heavy, the world is so painful, and it often feels like you're carrying it all on your own. So for somebody to come and unload that for you at no cost of ourselves, I mean, I don't know what could be better than that.
And you could question, like, what do you mean? Like, isn't that just like, and I think about this from time to time. I'm like, is it just inside my head? We'll all naturally kind of question our faith a little bit. There's no doubt about that. But faith is the belief that no matter what, I will rely on what I have accepted to be the truth. That's kind of not necessarily a good thing to say if an atheist is listening, but I'll tell you this. I would much rather go through life knowing that I accepted something that showed me some fulfillment, hope, and a message that not only impacted me, but thousands and millions of people before me and hundreds of people around me currently. That seeing God's love work through other people and his hope that he provides, giving grace and mercy to those that are in need and hurting, and what I've experienced in my life can only be an act of God. And, even going through my depression, I just give you guys an example, going through my depression and like experiencing how I feel now that, whoa, if you talked to me about this type of stuff a year ago, there would be nothing more that I would talk about than finding the love of my life in a relationship, getting to the point of acceptance that it's out of my hands and it's in God's hands. And once he gives that to me, I'll be so grateful, but I'm not seeking it, that I have given that over to God and it's totally in control of him. And that's the same way, going back to kind of the thing at the beginning of the episode was talking about law of attraction, and that, again, that is an example of giving that to God.
I'll be honest. I was somebody who looked at people who believed in God or put their belief or faith in God. I used to think that was weak. I used to think that people who had a strong faith were just more vulnerable and they couldn't understand the way that the world worked, that they needed to come up with an excuse or somebody invisible in the sky to put their troubles onto. I used to think that that was weak, but look, it's no secret that believers have a difficult time continuing their faith years upon years upon years. That's just part of what we're called to do, and that's something that I had to wrap my mind around. And I got a lot of freedom once I understood that. I'm like, oh, this is what it means to be separate, because you have that faith that's never going to go away, and you just know that day in and day out, like we've talked about, that this is a spiritual war. It's not a physical war that's happening. So that means that every single day we have to do empower our mind, train our minds, just like we would train our bodies to be able to withstand whatever's going to happen, or the people who think that, you know, we should be worshiping idols, just like you said, like the Israelites worshiping the golden cattle, right? After they were just promised everything. And then you think, well, how could somebody do that? But in reality, I do that every day. We all do that every single day. So there's just a big difference in us just being able to evaluate ourselves every once in a while. We're not going to be perfect.
And I think a big thing to hit on with all of that, with idolization, law of attraction, and we'll kind of wrap it up here, and maybe the horoscope or astrology, is that if we don't get the things that we want, it is natural for us to become bitter and resentful. Because we can't find peace and happiness with where we are currently at, with the reliance on God, that just like the Israelites did, doubting God and became resentful towards God and started worshiping other things besides God, that they also became bitter from that. And they wandered through the desert for 40 years. And it's much like how our culture is right now. We're wandering. There's so many people wandering. And that's the reason why when people hear truth, man, that sets a foundation in people's life. And it's like a renewal, and it's refreshing when they hear it. I mean, it's like, you know, things that Sam and I have talked about before. You know, God's really at work in my life. I know God's really at work in Sam's life. And I believe it is kind of a God thing that got us to this point where her and I are doing these episodes together, because it's something that I've prayed about a lot. I know that somebody that I can feed energy off of, somebody that I know kind of has the same mentality, that's a good communicator and can get behind the camera and be comfortable and feel maybe kind of at home doing it, because the impact that we can have on people maybe prevents that resentfulness or bitterness, and that God can work through us to bring to the mindset that, hey, maybe these are some things that we need to reevaluate.
Yeah, and I want to remind people too that we're not here to convince anybody that you need to stop doing this or you should start doing this, or to be judgmental. This is just shared experiences and what we see as a result of how everybody is moving through the culture. And yeah, I thank you. I like everything. I appreciate that. And I can only explain that us doing this together was because we both prayed for a way to bring the message forward that wasn't just still on TikTok by ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's just really nice to also have the different dynamic, you know, you bringing in that you used to believe in those things. See, me, I've never even got close, honestly, to accepting them. And honestly, you know, you look at like astrology and the horoscope and everything. I've just never accepted it. But I will say this. Yeah, I've been curious, but I will say this too. I don't walk into it. I don't go look into it. And I think like that's a preventative measure for a lot of people, is not to look into it. Now, in a culture that preaches being open-minded, right? We are told to be open-minded a lot in this culture. But understand, open-mindedness can lead you into a realm that God does not want you to be in. Let's just say that. and know that the consequences of that is resentfulness, bitterness. You know, all the people that preach open-mindedness, that are all about these things, often refuse to have the conversation with somebody like me. And instead, I know it because I know people that have talked about this and I've heard about it, but they'll talk behind my back instead of having the conversation with me. And unfortunately, that's part of what humanity is slander and gossip. And I'm not here to like, you must bring it to me, but rather that my heart hurts over that we as humans, knowing that we're made of dirt and we both have the same flesh and blood, maybe different DNA, that we can't come together and have a conversation about differences. That maybe that's my open-mindedness, is having the conversation with you. And that maybe closed-mindedness is going behind somebody's back and gossiping and not having the conversation. I hope by Sam and I having this conversation today that it brings to the forefront maybe some more conversations that we need to have about these things within our personal lives. Sam hit on it. I am not here, just as much as she is not here, to convince you, to convince you one way or the other, but rather that you hear an open dialogue, because unfortunately you don't get that enough. You don't. Generally, it's an argument, not a conversation. And Sam and I have the awesome opportunity in episodes like this to have the conversation with you guys. Sam, is there anything else you want to share?
I want to know what people would want to listen to next. I want to hear, what people are thinking. So tell us if you guys listen. Tell us what you think. If you like it, if you don't like it, I want to know.
Reach out to us, yo. Like, seriously, yeah. I know Sam's very open-minded. I'm very open-minded. As I've said before, if you don't like what I said, tell me that you don't like what I said. Let's have a conversation. That's what that whole spiel about gossip and slandering was all about, is let's have the conversation, yo. That's what I'm here for. Remember, have impactful conversations that are aimed to impact culture. Something like that, somewhere along those lines. So just, kind of remember the first way I said it at the beginning of the episode. But that's what we're all about. So reach out to us. Let us know what you think, and we'll be happy to reach back out to you guys. Remember to follow the Veritas. I almost said the Veritas 21 podcast, because, see, I'm still in that transition phase as well. But follow the Pursuit of Truth podcast on Instagram, TikTok. Subscribe on YouTube, yo. It's awesome. I've been seeing that grow a lot, so I appreciate all the subscribes there. Join the Facebook group. That's where you're going to get the overwhelming majority of the information of stuff that's coming out with the Pursuit of Truth podcast. Leave a Apple Podcast reviews. That will increase the analytics. And lastly, don't forget everything. Yeah, almost like I wish I could do my imagination sound right now. But everything is in the description. You don't even have to go look it up. You just click the link and poof, there it is. There's the Pursuing Truth podcast Instagram page. Alrighty, well, that's a really long outro. I think in 52 episodes, I've never had such a long outro. But you guys have a great week. God bless. And Sam, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to the next one.